Greetings, my name is Tina Holland and I am a program specialist with Washoe County School District's 21st Century Learning Division. And today I'm going to talk to you about assessment in the 21st century classroom. And I wanted to let you know that if you are looking at this through Edpuzzle, then you can have access to the actual slideshow and you can follow along with my script, or if you're looking at this on YouTube, I have the link to this slideshow connected to the YouTube information if you look down below, and you're more than welcome to follow along in the slideshow, and then you can look at the script as I'm talking, and then also the links and everything are right there in the slideshow. And then also, if you see this Edpuzzle image right here on the slide, and it will be in the upper corner, it means that there is something interactive to do, such as look at a site or watch a video or read an article. And in this workshop, this is a really packed full agenda, and we have a whole bunch of things we're going to investigate. As you well know, assessment is just a huge topic in education, and there is so much to it, and so it was very challenging to narrow it down to a 1-hour workshop. So there are a lot of things that I'm going to have you looking at, a lot of videos, a lot of articles, and tools that we're going to be investigating. So in this workshop, we are going to investigate what a 21st century teacher and student look like. We're going to look at the differences between formative and summative assessment. We're going to look at some strategies for effective formative assessment. And we're also going to take a look at the importance of metacognition and at some digital tools to get students to think about their thinking. And we are also going to investigate some common mistakes that teachers make in group work. I'm going to show you how to set up effective collaborative groups and some digital tools that students can use to help collaborate with each other. We're also going to look at some checking for understanding digital tools, and we're going to learn the elements of effective feedback, as well as look at some tools that will help us give effective feedback. So teaching in the 21st century goes beyond knowledge retention and just rote memorization, and it really focuses on the development of essential skills that prepare students for the world. And as educators, we need to now focus on creating learning environments for our students that transforms our roles from that sage on the stage to more like guides on the side. So what skills do our students need to be successful and productive people in the 21st century? We're going to take a look at our chart right here, and that is the top 5 needs employers are looking for today. And there's a lot more skills that go along with just what employers are looking for. There's a lot more to being functioning in the 21st century nowadays. But if you notice, the top one here is critical thinking and problem solving. And then we have using information technology and applying it, teamwork and collaboration, creativity and innovation, and diversity. So looking at our 21st century competencies, these are the skills that students need. And that is, students need to know how to collaborate and work with others. Students also need to go beyond knowledge reproduction and actually construct knowledge that is new to them through the process of critical thinking and problem solving. Students need to know how to solve real-world problems and be creative and innovative. Students need to know how to use technology as a tool for learning and how to use technology to design products for others. And self-regulation. Students need to know how to regulate the process of their learning. They need to know how to self-assess, and as well as take feedback and revise their work based on that feedback. And students need to know how to gather evidence and connect ideas, and then be able to use a variety of those tools to communicate those ideas and evidence to a specific audience. And along with each of these dimensions, we know there is a whole subset of skills included in these. The bottom line is that it is a tall order of skills that our students need in order to be successful in the 21st century. So what I'm going to have you do is follow the link, and you're going to watch the video Rethinking Learning, the 21st Century Learner, and answer the question, do you consider yourself a 21st century teacher? Why or why not? These skills that students need for the 21st century is forcing education to change. And the world is changing, as we all know, at an exponential rate. And how we teach has to change too. And to be truthful, as far as this changing goes, resistance is really futile. Education may not be changing fast enough to keep up with the world, but it is changing, and it is a bus that we need to jump on. So I'm going to have you take a look at this comparison chart between 20th century teaching methods and 21st century teaching methods. And right here is a teaching chart. If you want to look at it in a PDF view, which might be easier, you can do that. And there are some interactive links in here. But just go ahead and take a look at this chart, and then I'm going to have you answer the question, which side best describes your classroom or school and why? As educators, the change begins with us. We may not be able to change the world, but we do have power over what kind of teachers we are and how we want our students to learn and what we want our classroom to look like. And so I'm going to direct you to a site called Educational Origami, and it just has a wonderful wiki about 21st century education. And they have identified 8 characteristics of a 21st century educator, which are an adapter, a communicator, a learner, a visionary, a leader, a model, a collaborator, and a risk taker. And so I'm going to direct you to this website, and what I want you to do is go ahead and read about the 8 characteristics of a 21st century teacher. And then if you scroll down here to the bottom, there is a great video on learning to change, and I want you to watch that video. And then I'm going to have you answer the question, and that is, looking at the 8 characteristics of a 21st century educator, what characteristics are your strongest and why? And what characteristics do you need to improve, and how do you plan on improving them? The idea of being responsible for also integrating 21st century skills into our classrooms on top of everything else we need to do may seem daunting. However, it doesn't have to be. A shift in focus to a more formative assessment processes is a good first step. And in a 21st century classroom, the purpose of assessment is to understand how students are learning, not just what they're learning, and how to help them develop 21st century skills. Remember in our comparison chart that a 21st century classroom is a classroom with mainly formative assessment and some summative? So let's take a look at why our classrooms should be this way. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at a chart here, and that compares our formative assessment characteristics to our summative assessment characteristics. And I'm going to have you look at that and then answer the question, in your opinion, why do you think that the majority of assessment in the 21st century classroom should be formative? So what is formative assessment exactly? I'm going to have you watch this video with Dylan William. And Dylan William is like the guru on assessment. He's a leading expert, worldwide expert on assessment, and he's also the author of several books, one of them which is called Embedded Formative Assessment. And I'm going to have you watch the video and then ask the question, do you agree with Dylan William that assessment is the bridge between teaching and learning, and why or why not? So let's dive deeper into what formative assessment is and isn't. According to Connie Moss and Susan Brookhart from the book Advancing Formative Assessment in Every Classroom, formative assessment is an intentional learning process that teachers engage in with their students to gather information during the learning process to improve achievement. Formative assessment is not a test item, a test, or a series of tests. Formative assessment is a learning partnership that involves teachers and their students taking stock of where they are in relation to their goals. Formative assessment is not a prepackaged program or a set of techniques that teachers adopt and enact. Formative assessment is a philosophy of teaching and learning in which the purpose of assessing is to inform learning, not merely to audit it. And the formative assessment process is a fundamental reframing of the work teachers and students do day to day and minute by minute in the classroom. To be considered part of the formative assessment process, information gathered must be used to inform the learning of the current students. And although the quality of teaching rises as a result of formative assessment, the intended outcome must be to raise the learning and achievement of the students currently in the classroom on the concepts, processes, and skills that form the basis of the assessment. So now that we know that formative assessment is a day-to-day, minute-to-minute process that raises learning and achievement, how do we embed formative assessment into our curriculum? And again, back to the guru of assessment, Dylan William. He has identified 5 key strategies for effective formative assessment that I think you'll find very, very helpful. And so I'm going to have you watch his video, Unpacking Formative Assessment, and you're going to read the article on the 5 key strategies for effective formative assessment. And then you're going to answer the question, which of the 5 strategies stands out the most to you and why? So there are 3 questions that should guide the formative assessment process. And those 3 questions are, where am I going, where am I now, and what strategies can help me get to where I need to go. And there is the book that I referred to earlier by Connie Moss and Susan Brookhart called Advancing Formative Assessment in Every Classroom. It's an excellent book. And I'm going to have you read a passage out of the book about what 3 questions guide the formative assessment process. And you're going to read that section, and then you're going to answer the question, what do you think about the idea of having these questions displayed in your classroom to keep your students mindful of their learning? And so right here is an excerpt from the book. This is chapter 1. In fact, it has some great information in it, but at this point for our workshop, I am just going to have you scroll down here about a quarter of the way, and you are just going to read this passage right here, what 3 questions guide the formative assessment process, and then answer the question. Now that we have established the what and why of assessment, let's take a look at the how of assessment and some tools to help us. Remember, formative assessment is a process with the primary goal to improve learning, not merely to audit it. Formative assessment is assessment for learning rather than assessment of learning. And in order to be formative assessment, it focuses on learning goals. It takes note of where current work is in relation to the goal, and then it takes action to move students closer to the goal. On the other hand, summative assessment is to evaluate student learning at the end of an instructional unit by comparing it against some standard or benchmark. Summative assessment takes place after the learning has been completed and provides information and feedback that sums up the teaching and learning process, such as a unit exam or a product. And in the 21st century classroom, as we saw earlier, there should be mostly formative assessment with some summative assessment. Now don't get me wrong, a 21st century classroom needs both formative and summative assessment, but the assessment should be mostly formative. And one thing to consider before giving any summative assessment, and that is, I think this image here sums it up perfectly. And right here it shows a bird, a monkey, a penguin, an elephant, a goldfish, a seal, and what looks to be a dog. And then the caption says, for fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. And I think that this is a good analogy to keep in mind before we give our high-stakes summative tests in our classroom. So research has suggested that without reflection, no learning has taken place. In order for learning to take place, at some point, whether we're aware of it or not, we reflect on that learning. So reflection gets students to think about their thinking, and it's also known as metacognition. And I'm going to have you watch Dylan Williams' interview about metacognition. And then answer the question, what are your thoughts about metacognition? What are your thoughts about what he had to say in the video? An amazing, wonderful tool that gets students to think about their thinking and provides, it's a really great reflective tool, are blogs. And blogs are really a perfect formative assessment tool and fit like a hand in a glove for reflection and getting students to think about their thinking. In fact, if you look closer at blogging, it really could potentially be one of those magic bullet tools for a 21st century classroom. Getting students to blog when it's implemented correctly and done correctly, and those prompts and questions are asked correctly, blogging really is just an amazing 21st century classroom tool. So I'm going to have you take a look at several blogging resources, and I do have them all on this workshop's Pinterest board, so if you aren't bookmarking them or anything like that, don't get worried, they are on our Pinterest board. And the first resource is a fantastic website right here about blogging, and it tells you pretty much everything you need to know about blogging, reasons for blogging, criticisms that you might have, and then what's also neat too is they give some suggested blogging platforms right here. And then I'm going to have you look at some sample blogs. These are actually put out by the EduBlogger, and these are actual blogs of people's classes. And you pick a couple and check them out. And then I'm going to have you take a look at this great infographic, and it's a starter sheet on formative assessment using the reflection cycle. Also, I wanted to remind you that we're just looking at the tools. I'm not going to teach you how to blog or start looking at the blog sites or any tool that we're looking. I'm not going to teach you the how-to. I'm just, again, just guiding you to that resource. If you are interested in learning more information about the specifics and the basics on how to blog and how to implement in your class, we do in our workshops, we do provide a blogging workshop as well as many of these other Web 2.0 tools that I'm going to be going over. So once you've looked at these various blogging resources, I'm going to have you answer the question, what are some thoughts you have about using blogs in your classroom? Like a blog, a digital portfolio combined with strategic self-reflection can be a very powerful learning tool. And there are several sites that can be great venues for digital portfolios, such as livebinders.com, Google Sites, or even a blogging site can be set up as a portfolio. And so let's take a look at take a closer look at portfolios. I'm going to have you watch a YouTube video on portfolios and all the amazing things that they provide and benefit you and your students. And then I'm going to have you take a look at this website here. It's called Authentic Assessment Toolbox. And feel free to skim through the website. It is a very, very extensive website. In fact, probably one of the the most extensive websites I've seen on portfolios, and they just go over everything in there. So skim through it and kind of file it in the back of your mind. Make note that this is available here as a resource. This is also pinned up on our Pinterest board, so you don't have to be stressed about bookmarking unless you want to. And then I'm going to have you answer the question, and that is just give me a little bit of feedback and some of your thoughts about portfolios in your classroom. Graphic organizers can also be powerful metacognitive tools, as they are a visual representation of knowledge on a concept or a topic. And graphic organizers, same thing, if used correctly, they can be just wonderful tools for formative assessment and wonderful tools on getting students to think about their thinking. And so for graphic organizers, I'm going to have you read this, again, very informative article. And same thing, it has a lot of information in it. It's very extensive. And so if you just want to kind of skim through it or glance through it, or maybe go to topics that might interest you on it, or same thing, you're free to take your time and dig deep and read the whole article. But lots of information, lots of great information there on graphic organizers. And then after that, we're going to take a look at some tools for those graphic organizers. I'm going to have you take a look at an app and found in the iTunes App Store called Tools for Students. And then I'm going to have you go to an online tool, and it's an interactive tool. Holt puts it out, and this thing is just amazing. These right here, you can click on these graphic organizers, and they're interactive. You can actually make them your own. You can type in whatever information you want here, so you can imagine a student using these and how powerful that would be. You can also print them out, you can save them, you can export them as PDF, and there's just all kinds of things you can do with that website. Just amazing website. And then I'm going to direct you to another website that is just unbelievably incredible, and it's called Exploratree. And I'm going to have you watch their introductory demo video on Exploratree and what it does, and just all the amazing possibilities with these graphic organizers. I think you're going to be very impressed. So go ahead and take a look at those tools, and then you're just going to answer the question, and that is, what are your thoughts about these tools, or what are your ideas of maybe implementing them in your classroom? So according to Dylan William, if you can set up a group correctly, you can double the speed of learning. And let's go ahead and watch this video, and then we're going to take a look at some really neat online tools to help with collaborative learning. And I'm going to have you take a look at an amazing and great article about collaborative learning. And once again, it's a very extensive website, has all kinds of information in it, so feel free to dig as deep as you want or kind of skim through it. And this is also found on our Pinterest board. And then we're going to take a look at some tools, and these are just some more amazing tools again. And one of the tools is called ThinkBinder, and we're going to look at a video demo on exactly what ThinkBinder is, and I think you're going to be quite impressed. And in fact, my daughter, who's in college, she had a group project that she just did, and she ran into a lot of challenges with that. And I sent her this information and this tool, and she was just thrilled. She just thought it was the coolest thing. So we're also going to take a look at another online tool called Exam Time. And Exam Time is super, super neat. Exam Time allows you to create online mind maps, flashcards, online notes, and quizzes. And then it has a whole bunch of other tools with it, such as study groups, private messaging. It has a calendar. It has a goal setter, a study planner, and these tools can be shared with a group, with friends. They can be collaborative, and so this could be a very powerful tool for students to for collaborative learning, and super neat. Plus, you have access to resources that other people and other students have created. And then I'm going to have you take a look at a website, and we're going to take a look at a video on, it's called Memplay, and I'm not 100% sure I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but we know we have Google Docs, we know we have so many tools out there where students can collaborate on documents or spreadsheets, things like that, but there's not a lot of tools that I've come across where students can actually collaborate on a video together. And so this is a web-based tool, and this is a tool where it's a great video editor, and the video editor also is collaborative if you want it to be. And so I was going to have you take a look at that. And then finally, we're going to take a look at Collaborise Classroom. We're going to look at the video for Collaborise Classroom, and I think you'll be quite impressed here. And then the question you're going to answer are, what are your thoughts on collaborative learning? Did you have any aha moments? And out of all these tools, which tool interested you the most and why? And are there any tools here that maybe you might consider implementing into your classroom? So another important formative assessment is checking for understanding. And as educators, we are responsible for learning, not teaching. And so there's tons and tons of digital tools out there that check for understanding. There's all kinds of exit ticket tools. There's polleverywhere.com. There's all kinds of quiz makers. There's just tons of them out there. But I wanted to highlight just a few of my personal favorite ones, and ones that I have actually used in my classroom. And that is Edmodo, Socrative, and also using Google Forms with Flubaroo as an add-on. And so let's go ahead and take a look at Edmodo. And I used Edmodo for years in my classroom, absolutely love it. Edmodo has built-in formative assessment tools right here. You can do quizzes, you can do a poll, and you can do it on the fly. You can create a discussion, and you can do all kinds of things with Edmodo for reflection. And then another tool that they have just added is Snapshot. And Snapshot is kind of a micro assessment tool that has a bunch of pre-made quizzes for testing the Common Core standards, and it's geared towards state standards, and it's just like literally just a snapshot, a really cool tool. One thing that is also super amazing, awesome about Edmodo is they have quite an extensive app store. And so any kind of tools you're looking for formative assessments, besides their quiz maker and their polls and Snapshot, you probably can find in their app store. And one thing that's super neat with their app store is these tools in here, and a lot of them are free. Also, a lot of them are, if that aren't free, are super cheap. Like right here, sticky notes, $5, unlimited, which means you can implement this tool with as many students as you want for as long as you want. So all kinds of tools that you can add to your classes in Edmodo for that formative assessment and for assessments, and just Edmodo rocks. That's all I can say. It's a one-stop shop for all kinds of things. And so I'm going to have you watch the video on Socrative. I use Socrative in my classroom. In fact, it was one of the first checking for understanding tools that I used, and they have come, the upgrades that they have done are quite amazing and very impressive. One thing I like about Socrative is that you don't have to have a specific clicker or anything. It is web-based, and so if kids can get on the internet, they can get on to Socrative. And then I'm going to have you watch a video on Google using Flubaroo with Google Forms, and something that not a lot of people know about. And Google Forms is a whole workshop in itself, which we have that workshop, but Google Forms can be very powerful in the classroom. And so I'll let you take a look at Edmodo and Socrative and Flubaroo. I wanted to conclude this workshop on assessment in the 21st century classroom by focusing on feedback. Do you remember Dylan Williams' 5 key strategies for assessment? Well, giving timely feedback that moves learning forward is one of those key strategies. And effective feedback addresses the 3 student questions that have been interwoven throughout this workshop. And we keep seeing these questions. I think this will probably be the 3rd or 4th time we've seen these questions. And that is, where am I going? How do I get there? And how do I close the gap between my learning goals and my present understanding? To be successful, feedback needs to be immediate and identify the way forward. It should not simply tell learners whether their answers are right or wrong, or simply provide evaluative feedback in the form of grades and short, non-specific comments of praise or censure. And as we will learn from Dylan Williams, this latter kind of feedback affects students' senses of themselves and tells them how they stand in relation to others. But it offers very little direction for moving them forward. So if done right, feedback should motivate learning. And watch the videos and then read the article from Edutopia on feedback. And then we will look at 3 digital tools to help save time and provide feedback in a timely manner. I know from personal experience that giving feedback, and especially timely feedback, can be very difficult to do. Especially when you have 150 different things to give feedback on. And it does seem like a daunting task to find the time for effective feedback. It's really easy, especially when you have those 150 things, to write a few things or make a few candid comments. Good job, A. And it's easy to do that because I think oftentimes I know I felt just so overwhelmed with the amount of things that I had to grade and I had to go over. And so I have to admit, as a teacher, this was probably one of my definite areas of weakness, that looking back, knowing what I know now, I would have done significantly different. Because feedback, out of all those strategies, feedback from the teacher or feedback from peers or even self-evaluation, even self-feedback, really is powerful out of everything to move that learning forward and bring students closer to the learning goals, and to close that gap between where the student is and where the goals are. So feedback is very important. And there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do feedback. I'm going to show you some tools that hopefully, when implemented, it'll help you save some time on the feedback aspect and giving feedback. And so let's take a look. First of all, feedback can be verbal, it can be nonverbal, or it can be in written form. And there are many audio recording tools and screen recording tools out there. There's Screencaster and Screener, and there's Kaizena through Google. There's Vukaroo, VoiceThread, all kinds of audio recording tools. And they have found that giving audio feedback, or using screencasting, where you record your screen and then you're giving your voice audio feedback, is very, very powerful. More powerful than just writing those 1 or 2 comments, in that it's personalized. It motivates learners, it motivates students to listen to the feedback, and so we're going to take a look at some of the tools that we can do that and save time. And I'm going to admit that in my time I have seen, I would say, thousands of tools and apps. And it just is incredible how much is out there. But I'm going to tell you that this app that I came across has just knocked my socks off in amazement. And it is not only an amazing app for audio with video teacher feedback, but it's also an amazing app for self-evaluation, peer feedback, metacognition. The list is just endless. And I've included 2 videos. It's called Explain Everything. And I have included 2 videos that I want you to take a look at. And the first video is basically what Explain Everything is. And then the second video, which was actually created by students, gives some uses for using Explain Everything in the classroom. And I guarantee that as you watch these videos, that those brain gears of yours are going to be turning with ideas on how you can use Explain Everything in your classroom. I mean, this app is just incredible. And then after that, we're going to look at another screen capturing and audio tool that works with Chrome. And we're going to conclude our feedback tools with a website resource that provides tips and tricks for saving time and giving feedback on student work in using Google Docs. So go ahead and you tell me you're not going to get your socks knocked off in looking at this stuff. That concludes our workshop on assessment in the 21st century classroom. And I want to remind you that there is a Pinterest board filled with a plethora of resources for this workshop. And here it is right here. And you could see I have all kinds of things pinned to it. Our hero here, Mr. William. And the videos that you saw in this workshop are on here. The websites that I had you go to are on here, and all kinds of resources for assessment in the 21st century classroom. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you learned some valuable information that you can start using in your classroom right away. If you want to learn more about being a 21st century educator, visit our website at wcsd21.com. You can follow us on Twitter at wcsd21. And you can see all of the Pinterest boards that we have. I think we're up to 82 right now. Amazing resource. And that is at www.pinterest.com/WCSD21. And in your ed puzzle, if you could please read the disclaimer and then answer the question. And that is, you're going to write your first and your last name and the class that you are in taking this workshop, and then that will indicate that you have read this disclaimer.